Okay.
So God speaks. He speaks through a variety of people in a variety of ways. And He speaks at a lot of different times. But what's amazing is how often He speaks when you're being humbled. How clearly He speaks when you're being humbled. And who He speaks through. The best example I have of this came from this past summer's Collide Summer Camp. I went to this summer camp with my church, Calvary Community Church. And I was expecting a lot of fun. But overall, it was just a fun trip for me. It wasn't really for spiritual growth because I felt like I was more there to serve than to be served. And when I went, I was surprised. And the reason is, after several days of worship and quiet times every day, where we got to just sit down and nobody in the whole camp would speak, I still wasn't hearing God very clearly. And I found that the reason for this was, I believe, because I have a good imagination. And my strong imagination hurt me because I could never tell the difference between, is God really speaking to me right now, or do I just wish He was speaking to me, and that makes me want to hear Him. So I'm imagining it. And so every time I thought I would hear God speak later on, I just go, no, I could have just conjured that up. I've done it before. And someone like me who grows up in a pastor's family, he's no longer a pastor, but he used to be, knowing a lot about the Bible and stuff, it's very easy to hear a voice in your head that sounds like God, because everything you know is based in God. And so one night, the preacher preached a message, and everybody dispersed to prayer groups and stuff. There was a group of leaders on the side waiting to pray for people. And I'm not one of the leaders at the church, but I was wondering, am I supposed to be looking for someone to pray for here? Is there an issue in my life that I need to deal with that I'm just not getting here? Or what am I supposed to do? Because everyone in the room, it seemed, except me, was either praying, crying, or sharing stories about themselves. And I just sort of felt out of place. So what I did is I went over to the pastor, and I was going to talk to him about how do I hear God's voice more clearly. Because I'm struggling with that, with my imagination. And as I was standing in line to listen to what the pastor had to say, the most shocking thing happened. Jordan Cushion, some of you may know him, he was at the camp with me. And he walked up to me and he said, "Hey Jeremy, how you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing all right, but I'm struggling a bit." And he asked me if I wanted to talk about it. So I glanced over at the pastor, and then I said, yeah, and I walked away with him and told him my issue. And he discussed it with me for a moment and told me, "Have you prayed about it? How much have you prayed about it? Is it a constant thing, or do you just occasionally say, okay, God, speak, and 15 minutes later give up?" You know, he started giving me really good advice. And after about 5 minutes of an advice session, which was shocking to me, because I'd never seen Jordan step out like this, then he asked if he could pray for me. I just smiled and said yeah, and I bowed my head. And as he put his hand on my shoulder and started praying for me, I heard his voice for a few seconds, and then it faded out, and there was a different voice. And it said to me, "Do you see this? This is me. This isn't Jordan. He doesn't normally do this." And about 5 seconds later, Jordan finished his prayer. He kind of laughed and he said, "You know, this is kind of weird for me. I don't normally do this." And I just laughed and told him, "Yeah, I know. God told me. He spoke to me while you were praying." And that was one of the most incredible experiences of my life, because I was humbled to see a person that I didn't even know had a spiritual life be so revived by his desire to follow God that he could pray for me and give me advice, who'd grown up with this thing and been searching for Christ and seeking Christ all my life, basically. And so that's my story of how God speaks.